Welcome back. You're watching our special coverage here on CNBC TV 18 as we decode the implications of Imran Khan, Pakistan's Prime Minister, saying that they will return the Indian Air Force pilot in their custody. Wing Commander Abhinandan will be released back to India tomorrow. Is that a first credible attempt at de-escalation? That's what we're discussing here on our program. Still with us, Priya Pillai, international lawyer and consultant, Talmiz Ahmed, former diplomat, here with me in the studio. Also with me, Air Vice Marshal Arjun Subramaniam, former Foreign Secretary Shashank, and a former Vice Chief of the Indian Air Force, P.K. Barbora. Priya, let me come to you now. The development that's transpired now with Pakistan saying that they will release the Indian Air Force pilot in custody. The last time that Pakistan had an Indian Air Force pilot in custody, Flight Lieutenant Nachiket, it took almost 8 days for them to return him back to India. How do you read what has happened today?
Well, to start with, I would just say that this is excellent news. I think it's a big relief clearly to the family and to, many people around the country. I would say that it is legally the right thing to do. It is also morally the right thing to do. I would really emphasize the fact that, repatriation is something that is also a right under the Geneva Conventions, and it is something that needs to take place soon, and it needs to take place as soon as possible upon the cessation of hostilities. So, drawing to your point on de-escalation, that's where I really see legally very, very strong ground to say that at that point, when hostilities de-escalate, that is the point at which it becomes untenable to keep a prisoner of war, to keep somebody in detention or in custody, and you have no legal grounds. So for me, these are 2 points that are very important to make. The one additional point that I will make actually is looking specifically at, Geneva Convention 3 of 1949 relates specifically to prisoners of war and their status. It has 143 articles, which really go into details of the treatment, how prisoners of war are meant to be treated, very, very detailed provisions for the standard of protection, which is prevalent through the conventions. What I do want to emphasize also is the fact that when the 49 conventions were, drafted and deliberated, Article 118, which talks about repatriation of a prisoner of war, really was a different provision from what had existed previously. So you had the Hague Regulations of 1907, you had the 1929 conventions, which actually predicated repatriation on the signature of a peace agreement. And the 1949 conventions actually have made a very clear departure from that to say it's not about the signature of an agreement, however much that may be required or necessary, but it's upon the cessation of active hostilities. So there's a fundamental change in 49 and the way the convention looks at prisoners of war. And I think that's a valid point as well to be made at this point.
Given the fact that you say that this is legally and morally the right thing to do as per the norms of the Geneva Convention, with this act, do you believe that Pakistan and Imran Khan in specific have managed to change a little bit of the narrative? Because there has been significant condemnation across the world on what has transpired in Pulwama, asking Pakistan to dismantle terror installations operating on Pakistani soil. With this gesture today, do you believe that Pakistan may have redeemed itself just a tad?
Absolutely. I think, as I say, I said it's legally and morally correct. It's probably strategically also, in their interest to have done this. I think there was a considerable amount of pressure that was being brought to bear. I think the fact that you had a pilot that was in custody and, that it was recognized that he had been shot down and he was in the custody of the Pakistani army. I think it is a show of goodwill, and I think it is definitely a very positive step that should be appreciated as well. But I would also like to emphasize that repatriation is also a right. It's not, there is an obligation under the Geneva Conventions as well to repatriate a prisoner of war.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is an obligation, and Pakistan has come good on that obligation. Let me now move the conversation to what the next steps are. And Mr. Shashank, I'd start by asking you, what is the end game here? India said we will not get into dialogue with Pakistan until there is actionable, verifiable and credible action that Pakistan takes against terror installations on Pakistan soil, specifically the Jaish-e-Mohammed. We're diplomatically taking this up through the UN Security Council. We hope that there will be pressure put on Pakistan economically as well. Their economy is virtually on the brink of a collapse. They're seeking an IMF bailout. They're already on the grey list, and possible review in October could see them being put on the blacklist as well. But what is the end game now for India?
India would like to see peaceful neighborhood which goes by international norms of civilized conduct. We have offered so many times good trade relations, good connectivities, visits to pilgrim centers, all kinds of facilities have been offered from time to time. In fact, if you recall that only till recently we were talking about how to facilitate the visits of Sikh pilgrims to Kartarpur Sahib.
That's right.
And then suddenly this Pulwama thing came up, and which gave us reason to believe that perhaps Pakistani army had not changed its colors, and Imran Khan might meet the same fate which Nawaz Sharif or Benazir Bhutto met. Fortunately, it seems that Imran Khan has been able to persuade General Bajwa that Naya Pakistan isn't in Pakistan's interest, it's in the interest of Pakistan army. And therefore, there seems to be a slight change. But this is a very slight change, as we just discussed a little while ago. And Pakistan needs to work hard on this. One thing is that, yes, they have to work against the terrorists. If they cannot destroy them themselves, then they should either send them to Afghanistan, Iran, or India, and we should be able to take care of them, but they should inform us that, yes, this is what is going on. Second is that they have to be told by the permanent members of the Security Council that this time and in future times, they will all be united in taking action against terrorists, because there are so many resolutions of the Security Council, so many decisions taken by the Security Council Committee on Terrorism, which are being flouted by the permanent members themselves. Now they have reached a stage where, let's say, the American president has said that America would like to withdraw from the theaters in Middle East and in South Asia. It's for the regional countries to take a bigger role in sorting out the issues. Are China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, UAE and others willing to take that role and put pressure on Pakistan to see that this is the right direction for them, for their military and for their political leadership? This is good for all of them. Otherwise, what will happen? That political leadership will give us something very much on the positive side, and then they would be eliminated after some time, maybe put behind bar or somewhere else. So therefore, we have to keep that in mind, that all of them have to move together, and the pressure has to come from within and from outside. And India is willing to go the whole hog to make positive gestures in this direction to everyone. I mean, just see, Afghanistan flights are being stopped. All the West European flights coming to India, Canada has stopped its flight connections.
Our airspace is open, but the Pakistan airspace is closed, though they have now, I'm given to understand, temporarily lifted the NOTAM. But let me come to you, Air Vice Marshal Subramaniam. In terms of the next steps, in terms of the end game, what is it that you would like to see?
From a military perspective, what do I think we want? And what are the consequences of the two issues that I will dwell on? One is, the first is that the Pakistan army must stop acting as an active sponsor of cross-border terrorism, in that facilitating infiltration of outfits like the Jaish-e-Mohammed and the Lashkar-e-Taiba into Jammu and Kashmir, and thereafter spreading out into the rest of the country. So number one, stop acting as a sponsor and facilitator of cross-border terrorism in India.
You know, everyone's skeptical on this panel with regards to that, being able to achieve that particular objective, given the background, the track record of how the Pakistan army has operated. So in the discourse of this Naya Pakistan, given the outside pressure, do you feel hopeful that that is likely to change?
You know, I'm skeptical. But what has changed is India's response mechanisms are not going to be the same as earlier. So whether that will induce some amount of change in the behavior of the Pakistan army is yet to be understood and yet to be seen. Like some commentators have said, and I agree with them, that we are in virgin territory. We are in uncharted territory, uncharted strategic territory.
Yes.
And therefore, we need to be skeptical, we need to be hopeful, and we need to have very clearly defined requirements as to what do we want. And what are the consequences that we are willing to sort of inflict, or what are the consequences in case the behavior does not change. And those consequences have been, the penalties have been raised a bar.
Yeah.
And so I think we just need to wait and watch. The test bed is what happens in Jammu and Kashmir over the next couple of months.
Absolutely. That is going to be crucial to watch out for. Air Marshal Babura, let me get you to comment on what we just heard, that we are now in uncharted strategic territory. So what would you like to see in terms of tangible action from here on, weighing the consequences intended and unintended?
Well, firstly, let me put it this way. The actions that we want to see on ground is that all this firing that has started off more so in the recent 3 days across the LOC has to stop from both the sides. Once that stops, there should be, like I mentioned earlier, an agreement or in writing given out by Pakistan that they will do everything to remove these terrorists and will not sponsor anything in the neighborhood. Thirdly, which is more important, that we see Pakistan becoming a real democracy with powers not with the uniformed army or the ISI, and a real democracy is operated from the parliament. I agree with Chief Marshal Naik. For everything, presently the Pakistan government has to do, they have got to get the blessings of the uniform. Why? I'll tell you why. The uniform people do not want to give up their position. Of how many of their chiefs have settled abroad in palatial mansions? All the major businesses in Pakistan are run by pseudo-military. Do you think they want to give up that position? I'm sure they don't. That will be the biggest hurdle for Pakistan in the future, to tame their army. To tame their army. If they do that, I'm sure the people of Pakistan will definitely stand up for a good democratic Pakistan. And from India's point of view, there will be no talks till the time we see some of these issues being given in writing. Not that Pakistan has given us in past so many things in writing, which I keep saying is as good as toilet paper, because they have never actually gone by the letter and spirit of these agreements. It's always the army who has had the last say.
Yes, the army has had the last say in Pakistan. I would like my panelists to comment on the statement, and I don't know what to make of this. I'll get all of you to comment on this. And Mr. Ahmed, let me start by asking you. Prime Minister Modi, during the Shanti Swaroop Bhatnagar Prize for Science and Technology ceremony at Vigyan Bhavan, speaking just a short while ago, saying pilot project hone ke baad scalable kiya jata hai. To abhi ek pilot project ho gaya, abhi real karna hai, pehle to practice thi. I mean, is this good old posturing? Should we, we understand that, what has happened today is only the first steps in our attempts to de-escalate. But what would you make of this statement? Do you think that there's some coded message there at all?
There are many messages. I think they are overall positive. He was speaking at a science event.
Yes.
And he spoke a lot about the need for scientific achievement, scientific progress, etc., and was actually awarding scientists, rewarding scientists for their achievement. He also spoke about space, and that the next generation, so he had a great vision for the future. So I think this is very clear that no leadership of South Asia wants to see war. You have to focus on your people, particularly our young people. We have to take them forward. We have to give them a vision of hope. based on science and technology. Otherwise, they will be lost. They'll be marginalized. They will become dissidents. They will lead to violence. So I think that is where we are all on the same side. Now we have a problem with Pakistan. Well, Pakistan has grown very differently, largely due to the support it enjoyed from the United States. They sponsored a jihad in Afghanistan for 10 years. And then the Pakistanis continued to support that jihad with full American and Saudi approval in Afghanistan. So this affiliation with jihad is a unique Pakistani contribution to regional affairs. That this is the only country. In all other countries, jihadis are dissident and opposition figures. Here you find jihadis are state-sponsored figures. And that is where you have a unique challenge, that how do you get rid of this problem? I think now diplomacy will now have to work. I think the armed forces have done what they had to do. We used to have a bogey about the nuclear concerns. That is now put behind
That bluff has been called. But, you know, just on this point, and let me get the two of you, Air Vice Marshal Subramaniam as well as Mr. Shashank, to comment on that. I'll start by asking you, Mr. Subramaniam, as we just heard here from Mr. Ahmed, he believes that at this point in time, the military action perhaps is done for now. Would that be your indication as well? Because, look, India made its position clear that we didn't go in there and attack any Pakistani military establishment or military target, the Air Force, Army. They were the aggressors. They came in and hit our military installations, or at least attempted to do so. Do you believe that at this point in time, military action perhaps would not be the order of the day, and the Indian response will have to be calibrated?
Let me put this in a different perspective. As far as the Indian armed forces are concerned, with 2 live and active borders, military action is never over. Military action will always coexist at different levels. So I will argue that probably with the release of Wing Commander Abhinandan, the military activity probably would go down maybe a notch. But that doesn't mean that in any way the Indian military can lower its guard. I would say that robust deterrence needs to continue. And I have, I have a punchline which says the radars must keep churning.
The radars must keep churning. Air Marshal Bobura, would you agree with that as well? That, the radars will keep churning. Of course, nobody can let the guard down just yet. But do you believe that? Yes, go ahead, sir.
Look, I would, Subbu has used a very nice, actually, we have worked together earlier. And I think our views are in consonance. The radars must keep churning, our guns well oiled, our machines always available to us to be used any time that the country demands of us. And because of the strong military, I only would say that the people of India, please be 100% confident that we are there for you any time that we are required to be used. We are there.
Okay. And I think that message the Indian Armed Forces have sent out year after year, and that is something that we have perhaps taken for granted as well. Let me also bring in Professor Manoj Kumar Sinha. Professor Sinha, thanks very much for being patiently on the line with us. What do you make of the developments of the day? We're also standing by now for the joint briefing of the 3 services. Mr. Sinha.
Thank you very much. I just see this particular like a development or more on the perspective of the international humanitarian law, and it's also our diplomatic victory, that the amount of pressure. So India has a different position today, and this is because nobody expected the release will be so soon. So it means some way our diplomatic channels worked very hard, and it achieved the result, which all of a sudden in the evening, Prime Minister Imran Khan in the parliament, while addressing the parliament, he said that they're going to be, Abhinandan is going to be released tomorrow afternoon. But my concern is more regarding the application of international humanitarian law and international human rights law, which many people asked me yesterday also. I said it's not necessarily only international humanitarian law differs, and we should not go in the status of individual. If any national, non-national, even non-nationals enter in a territory of any state, whatever the crimes, whatever happened, he must be treated with dignity. In fact, it's starting with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And what we see now recently, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which actually applies in the time of armed conflict, in the peacetime, what they have said is now there is a international human rights law and international humanitarian law complement each other. So even in peacetime, international humanitarian law is applicable. So a lot of people asked about the status. So I see that this gesture on the part of the Pakistan, it's not on their own, because it's a tremendous pressure which our political setup, current regimes managed to put on the Pakistani government through the various channels, and it's a great success. And I think that both parties, like, it applies. We can go back to the 1971 when General Manik Shah asked Pakistani forces to surrender, and he had said that they will be treated with dignity, and we did that. So there are a lot of cases. India has always, believe strongly in the human rights, respecting the dignity of the individuals, and this is a great achievement. So this is a great achievement.
And that is our hope. That is our hope that that Wing Commander Abhinandan returns to India unconditionally and unharmed. As we wait by for that joint briefing of the three armed forces, large numbers there outside of North Block and South Block waiting for that briefing. It was meant to happen at about 4 p.m. and then it was rescheduled to 7, and that was because this development took place where the Pakistan Prime Minister made that assurance of return. So we are waiting to see what the statement will be. I would imagine it is expected to be a calibrated response. So far, Indian briefings have been short, have been succinct, and there have been no questions. Mr. Shashank, would you expect that would be the case? Short, succinct, no questions in this briefing as well? And is it unusual that we actually have the three forces doing this joint briefing? I don't know who from the forces will do it, but it's the Indian Air Force, the Army and the Navy jointly doing the briefing.
Well, whatever they say, I will abide by that, because I am now a retired person and they are the serving one. They know what is to be done. But I must say two things. One is that Prime Minister has given a clear-cut signal with his statement that we are not going back to terrorism and talks together. And that should be a clear-cut message. So escalation, de-escalation, they are all there. We have made a very clear-cut, very carefully worded statement by the Foreign Secretary, and that we should stand by that. Second point is that if what Professor Sinha has mentioned, that I really remember now 1971 and how we treated the Pakistani POWs. But what about the Pakistanis treating our 54 POWs? Can they at least admit that they have done away with them? Can they admit that they have tortured them? Let them come out clean on that also when they're talking about humanitarian law and application of these international principles, etc.
Absolutely. We are, as I said, waiting by. Eva Subramanian, what would your expectation be from this joint briefing?
Oh, I see. I would imagine that the reason why the briefing was postponed by a couple of hours
was because
of a recalibration based on the statement from Pakistan.
That's right.
Okay. So, and the reason why I think that all the three services are represented is because it's once again, it's a process of signaling. Signaling is very, very important. The airstrikes was a part of signaling. The three services together for such an important briefing after the MEA has laid the framework. You see, that indicates a certain amount of synergy. The first statement, if you recollect, was put out by the MEA. Subsequently, also a very terse statement by the MEA.
That's right.
Okay.
Though we did have an Air Force representation there, but the briefing was done by the MEA spokesperson.
And there's also a specific reason. There's a phenomenon that is called the fog of war. And I think in the fog of war, the MEA is best suited to issue statements. And when the fog of war clears, that's when probably the specialists or the experts can come in and offer their opinions. And so I think that's one of the reasons why now you have all the three services coming in and probably sort of facing the reporters and making a joint statement What the contents will be, I would not.
We'll just have to wait for a couple of minutes, and I would request your patience and request you to continue to be with us here in the studio as we wait by for them. But, I want to pick up on the fog of war issue that you spoke of, and for, regular Indians who are watching this. We've heard of ceasefire violations over the last few days. We know about the strikes that have taken place, India, and then yesterday, Pakistan. But given where we stand today in terms of all the diplomatic efforts, in terms of what we've seen happen in Pakistan, do you believe that the likelihood of this escalating into anything close to a war is less today?
I think the possibility of escalation has now receded. And I don't believe that that is likely to come up. The reason we have the three services doing a joint briefing is to signal that we are together. It is to signal military resolve that if there is ever any threat to India again, they can expect a very robust response and it will cover all the three. So it will need not be a small, quick, symbolic gesture. It will be something even more robust. But this is a signal to the Pakistani armed forces. Up to now, we have said we are attacking the terrorists.
Yes.
But if the terrorists continue to be sponsored, we have to go after the sponsor, not after the minion. So I think that is why you have the three of them. I think as of now, it has receded. But the signal is being given. But as I mentioned earlier, diplomacy will now be the main instrument as far as India is concerned. Of course, at various levels, the diplomatic level as well as the political level. I think we are now much better off than we were before. Do recall here after the attack on Parliament, all kinds of statements were made by Pakistanis. Nothing happened. After 2008 attack, all kinds of statements were made by the Pakistanis about controlling A, B, and C. Nothing happened. So even now, if they take some symbolic gestures, it's not helpful. Nothing happens. I think even this, we have been focusing on this UN resolution. I think we should now go beyond that. That enough is enough. Just getting a formal resolution for this lunatic is not going to help us anymore. We need to get him. All the other, it doesn't stop. You don't need a UN resolution.
The access to finance is going to be the important one.
We should be able, all other countries, if China continues to obstruct this this resolution for its own political interest, what about the rest of the international community? Individual countries are not restrained. They can blacklist this individual and his group. But I think we should go beyond. We should talk about jihad as a whole. It doesn't matter Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Tayyiba, Hizbul Mujahideen, etc. All that is jihad. There's just one jihad. All these are individual instruments of jihad. What about the Afghan Taliban, Tehreek-e-Taliban, Pakistan? All of these bunch have had their day. That is the signal. And that has to be now projected diplomatically. That will be the most effective. It should be done in Riyadh and in Abu Dhabi as well as in Washington. These are the three capitals that carry clout. One of them politically and financially, the other financially, and the third also politically. You know. So this is what we have to do. These have not been together with us till now. Now we are together because India's stature has changed. We have become a major role player in regional affairs. We are a very major economy.
A big
we are
market.
Technological. We are a big market for their produce, and we will continue to be for several decades to come. So all India's scenario has changed.
That's right.
And we've also signaled that we are not going to be perturbed by this, nuclear blackmail. We couldn't handle this earlier because of this nuclear blackmail. That we have the right to attack you, but you have no way you can attack us. And that is an absurd scenario for anyone.
I want to pick up on the point that you just made, which I think is an important issue. And let me get the former Foreign Secretary to comment on that. The OIC meeting, Sushma Swaraj, guest of honor, India being invited to that. Pakistan was hemming and hawing over whether it would attend since India is going to be present. The latest reports suggest that it will attend but will not meet her on the sidelines. Not that India was planning to meet with Pakistan anyway. But the significance of that in the context of what Mr. Ahmed was just pointing out.
I think this OIC is at a turning point. If you recall that 1969, when even before OIC was formed, there was a meeting in Rabat where Pakistani leaders, they just not only hummed and hawed, but they just simply said that India will not be allowed to participate, otherwise the conference is over. And everybody gave in. Now, things have to change. They are changing slowly, but I think Pakistan has to recognize that now they cannot do the same thing to Saudi Arabia or UAE. I recall how Albania used to send messages after messages to China. Okay, look, we are both communist parties. We are very senior communist party leaders. So you come and they will tell Mao, you come here and we'll advise you how to deal with it. So Pakistani leaders are thinking that they know so much about Islam that perhaps, and they have all the jihadis with them. So now they want to advise Saudi Arabia and UAE what is in their interest. So I think they can give them some money to take care of their monetary interests.
Right.
But I don't think otherwise they will have to tell them that this is how you have to behave responsibly in the region. I think that will be a very big message of the OIC, and I see invitation to Madam Sushma Swaraj to be invited to the inaugural ceremony as a guest of honor is in that direction. So let us see. I think it is at a turning point. We should see whether the OIC is able to move away from giving in to blackmail by countries like Pakistan or Pakistani jihadis, or it moves away from that.
Though the OIC did condemn India's strike, though preemptive and non-military, but nevertheless the OIC did condemn that. We will take a break and return as soon as we get confirmation on that briefing. We believe it's expected to start in a few moments from now. We'll be back in a minute.